monthly discussion. I'm Shelley Emling, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club, which now has about 52,000 members. So welcome everyone to tonight's monthly discussion. I'm so pleased that you all chose The Measure as our book club pick for December. Just a reminder that our book club pick for January is Mad Honey, and for February is The Quarry Girls. And we'll have the authors of those books joining us in the next 2 months. But tonight we're here to talk about The Measure, which was an instant New York Times bestseller. And we're so pleased to welcome the author tonight, Nikki Erlick, who I've never met before. And I'm so pleased to welcome you, Nikki.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. And I just have to say that the thing I loved most about this book, The Measure, is that it was such a unique idea behind it. You know, it seems like every book you read is a little bit of reminds you of another book sometimes. This was so unique in its concept and execution, and I'd never read anything like it. And so that is such a rare thing when you read a book that's so unique and original, I should say, original. So first of all, I think every reader, every member of the Girlfriend Book Club wants to know, how in the world did you come up with this idea? And how many years ago was it? Has it been percolating in your head for a very long time?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it made it a little bit of a problem, actually, when we were first kind of shopping the book around, because we didn't know what books to compare it to. And we didn't even really know like what genre to call it.
Right.
I've heard the book labeled as every single possible genre, which I really enjoy that. But the idea started really, I think back in 2018 was when it first kind of was swimming around in my head. And it started from, honestly, a lot of different sources. One, I think, being I've always been someone who's just kind of drawn to these big questions that don't really have answers. Things that bother me, things that I think bother everybody. These questions of, why is life so random sometimes?
Right.
Why is it so unpredictable? How much power do I really have over my fate, my personal destiny? How much control do I have? Especially during times like, as we've all lived through these past couple of years, where everything just feels so out of our control.
Right.
And so I wanted to see if I could tackle these questions through a story, because I've always turned to stories since I was a little girl to kind of help me make sense of the world, help me make sense of my personal emotions, feel less alone in, the emotions and confusions that I feel. And so I was thinking, can I write a story about fate, fate and life, which are these huge, huge topics, of course. And the light bulb moment came when I remembered the ancient Greek mythology of fate and their belief in the three fates, these three women, three sisters who were thought to have this power of spinning these threads of life on their spindle, and that these threads would determine the amount of time that every person received. And I've always been a big
that's interesting.
Yes, and I've always been a big believer in like girl power. I know you guys are as well, and so I think I was drawn to the fact that it was these three women who were thought to have this incredible power.
Right.
And I just thought, what if these strings were real? What if I could kind of send them to people, and what would happen to the world? And everything just sort of spiraled after that.
So that was in 2018. You started.
That was in 2018. Yes. And I had the idea of the strings. The second thought was, well, how do I get them there? Did the string just appear in your hand one day? Like what? And I wanted it to be a choice that people could make of whether or not they would look at their string. And so that's what led me to another Greek myth that everyone, knows and loves, Pandora's box.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I'll put the string inside a box, and it becomes this, individual test for people of, can you resist kind of the curiosity of looking or not looking? That was 2018, 2019. I was working, I had a full-time day job at the time. So I was writing a little bit on the side, not moving very fast. And then the pandemic hit, and I got laid off from my job. That's when all of a sudden I was like, I have to write this story. It really feels like there's something mirroring what's going on in the world and what I've been writing. And now I'm newly unemployed, so I have no excuse not to write.
Well, I was going to say I mean, no spoilers here because it happens very quickly in the book in the early stages. But I mean, everybody in the world basically over the age of 22 and older gets a box on their front door, by their front door, and inside is a thread, right?
Yeah.
And it says the measure of your life lies within. Is that what it's?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see how short your string is or how long it is, and that determines, how long you're going to live, basically.
Yes.
But you don't have to look in the box.
No, everyone can. You don't have to. You don't have to look. You don't have to look at that moment. You can look 20 years from now if you'd like. Everyone can kind of make their own decision.
Yeah. So I know you went to Harvard, and I know you've been a travel writer. Can you just tell me, have you always wanted to be a writer since you were little, or how now you're this famous? You've got this big novel that's famous. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Always wanted to be a writer. It's truthfully the only job that I can ever think of myself dreaming of, which is why it's just I'm so lucky that I'm actually getting to live it now. But I just was always obsessed with books and reading from a very young age. My grandparents, who the book is dedicated to, they taught me how to read when I was, before I was even in school. They wanted me to be a reader at a really young age. And I just fell in love with books. And there was always something in the back of my head thinking, maybe one day I could write one of these. But, I felt like I had to be practical and get a job first, and, trained in journalism, and then became a travel writer, which was incredible. Of course, that's what I was doing when then the pandemic hit, and, travel was unfortunately kind of shut down. Right. And, but I never let go of the dream of maybe one day I could write a novel. And so, gosh, I'm just really, really grateful that it's happening. So
was it hard to get an agent or a publisher? Did you find that some publishers didn't quite get it at first, or what? I mean, how did that work?
Yeah, it's so funny because I wrote this entire manuscript, the whole story without an agent, without really knowing anybody who had published a novel before. I didn't get an MFA. I didn't really sort of have any sense of what to do. Yeah. So I wrote this whole novel. Then at some point when I start sending it out to agents, I do have this moment where I'm like, ooh, is anyone going to think that this novel is just too far out there? Is everyone going to, accept that I just wrote about these, strings and boxes appearing for people? And so I'm very lucky that, it did resonate with some people, and they wanted to work on it with me, and, found an agent. And then she's the one who helped me eventually get to my publisher, HarperCollins, which has been amazing.
That's great. We had, I don't know if you've read Remarkably Bright Creatures.
Yes. That's such a heartwarming story. Oh my God.
That was our book club pick a month or two ago, and the author joined me as well. Yeah. And she said that when she sent it out, the publisher said, that read it, said, the assistant said, this is either the craziest story I've ever read, or it's brilliant. I don't know which one it is.
Oh my God. I don't know. I don't think you could read that and not fall in love with, with Marcellus and not think it's crazy, but yeah.
So obviously the measure is told from multiple viewpoints. Was that difficult to do, or was that a decision you made up front that I'm going to tell this through the eyes of various people living through this?
Yeah, my first thought actually was, I'm just going, I have this big, wild topic, so I'm going to keep the characters small and just write a love story between, two characters, one with a long string and one with a short string, and how that affects their relationship. But very quickly I realized I can't just keep this to two perspectives. There are just so many potential storylines here, so many different ways you could react to, to this happening. And so more and more characters kind of were knocking on the door in my imagination. And I felt like at some point, oh my gosh, I have to explore the implications on the healthcare industry, because this is a life and death decision, and they're working more intimately with the life and death. And so I brought in a doctor character. Right. I thought, how would this affect things, politically? Because I was watching how the pandemic kind of, became a political issue in real time. And so I thought, okay, I'll bring in a politician character. So all these kind of potential stories just kept popping up. And by the time I hit the 8 characters, I had to cut myself off at the risk of totally confusing readers with too many characters. But it was, it was fun to kind of explore so many different people.
Well, it was interesting because, you even talk about the impact on online dating, for example. You're a short stringer or a long stringer, which I thought it was so interesting the way you really did. you believed if this happened, this would affect everything, every industry, government and beyond. So I thought you did a really good job with that. So
yeah, I get a lot of sort of people comment to me about the Bachelor spinoffs, that there's different bachelors for different strings. Yeah,
I thought it was amazing. Yeah. So you said that, you had your limit on your characters, but I mean, was there a character or a chapter or a scenario or something that was a little bit more challenging to write than the others in the book? Maybe something you had to really do some research on or talk to some people or no?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the hardest parts for me were, the more intense emotional aspects of the book, and just,
right,
getting into that frame of mind to write a scene that was going to be really tough. And, my goal was not like, I want to make people cry or anything like that. But I was like, I do have, I'm going to be tackling some, sadder moments. And those were hard for me. I'm like a very sensitive person. I will cry at like a 30-second commercial. And so, having to really inhabit these scenes day in and day out was, kind of quite intense. Yeah.
But even the friendship between the two young men in the military, that was quite intense too. I would have thought, I don't know if that was difficult for you to write, but I mean, that was very real to me, what they were feeling and going through.
Yeah. I mean, and certainly kind of, half of it is drawing on your real life, the real friendships I've had, the depths of those relationships. And then the other half is my imagination. I'm obviously not, a young boy in a military academy. So I do have to, I did have to do some research, on what does that world look like. But to me, it's like, they're all different types of love stories, whether that's love between, romantic love, or it's sibling love, or it's friendship love, and kind of just accessing those parts of your, your heart.
So what was your writing process like? So this is beginning of COVID, I guess. So did you say, I'm going to get up at a certain time and write X amount of hours, or what was your writing process like? I'm always curious.
Yeah, I wish it were more organized. I so admire the people who wake up at 5 a.m. and write from 5 to 7 and then take a break and then come back at 8. I'm so haphazard. I will wake up one day and just inspiration is coming. I'll write for 12 hours straight. I'll forget to eat meals. And like at the end of the day, be in this just total stupor. Yeah. And then the next day be like, let's do it again. And it's just nothing, complete writer's block. Yeah. So I really have to take it each day as it comes. It's the inspiration kind of ebbs and flows a lot, but I try to just write a little bit if I can each day. But if it doesn't come, I step away, I read a book, I do something else. I don't try to force it.
But did you do an outline first, or did you just start? Did you know what the ending was, in other words, before you started, or did you just sort of you dove into it?
I knew the ending. I knew the length of every character string from the beginning, and I knew where I wanted the book to end, but I didn't know anything about the middle. So I hesitate to call it an outline, because it was, here's where I'm beginning, here's where I'm ending, figure out everything in the middle. Right. And so that was really figuring it out as I was writing it, as the characters were being shaped.
Yeah. I'm just curious. So when you were doing this kind of book, which is so unique, so original, did you bounce the idea off of family and friends? Did they think, what are you writing about, strings showing up at people? Like, what are you doing? Did anybody say, are you nuts? Or did everybody say, my gosh, what an amazing idea?
Yeah, I mean, so I was writing a lot in quarantine, where I was living with my parents and sister. We all kind of, because I lost my job, I gave up my apartment, I moved back home. And so I did bounce the idea off of them. I'm very lucky that my mom and sister in particular are very good readers and very good, writers and editors. So they were able to help me. But it was really just them, because we were so isolated at the time. Yeah. And, I did bounce the idea off of them, and we kind of debated, would we open the box or not? But nobody stopped me from writing what is kind of a wild story now that I think about it.
Once again, we're talking to Nikki Erlick, the author of The Measure. So I just have to ask then, after you said that, if you received that box, would you have opened it?
I don't think so. I think I would have tried really hard not to, but I do recognize that I might have the type of personality that just couldn't resist. Yeah. What about you?
I would not have opened it.
No,
I wouldn't have wanted to know. Yeah, I would have been like the main woman character in there that didn't look. Yeah,
shove it in the closet. Yeah.
So one of the book club members asked why you chose the age of 22 to that's when people start receiving the box, when they turn 22. But before that, nobody knows what's going to happen.
Right.
Was that something you thought of from the very beginning, that I'm going to use the age of 22 as kind of the cutoff?
Yeah, it was a tough choice. But I knew from the beginning that I wanted it to come at something that felt like the sort of cusp of adulthood, at a time when you were, hopefully mature enough to really think through the consequences of this decision. And so not so young that you can't quite wrap your head around, the pros and cons, but also young enough that it felt like whatever you saw in the box, whatever decision you made, you could hopefully use it to kind of inform the way that you want to live the rest of your life and the decisions you make going forward.
Yeah. So what do you hope readers take away from this? Do you hope that they think more about what the measure of a life really is, or what a life really means, whether it's short or long? Or, what I thought was interesting to me, it was a little bit like It's a Wonderful Life in a way, the movie, that, the short stringers often saved a long stringer, that everybody plays a role in everybody else's life, which that's actually my favorite movie. So this is another reason I love the book. But it was sort of like that we all have a role to play, and we're all connected to each other, whether we realize it or not. So
absolutely.
What is that? What are you hoping people take away from this?
Yeah, book? I mean, you just articulated it so beautifully. Yeah, absolutely. I love that comparison. I too love that movie, especially this time of year to be talking about it. Absolutely, that we're all connected. That every life, no matter its length, no matter our many differences, has the same value and meaning and purpose, and that we are touching each other's lives even when we can't see it, which was very, important for me to be writing during a time of isolation, a time of, I was only interacting with 3 people, but I wanted to remember that we are all connected as humans, even when we can't see it actively happening. And to me, reading is really all about empathy. When you open up a book, you have to empathize with this character you've never met before, and come to kind of laugh with them and cry with them and root for them. And so I wanted to also have a story that hopefully promotes empathy and compassion for people who are different from us, compassion for yourself, and just contributing a little bit of that hopefully positivity to the world in a time when we really need it.
Yeah. Was there a character that one of our book club members asked, was there a character that you really related to the most, that was more kind of like you? Or I
don't know. There are certainly little bits of myself probably in all of them. I related a lot to the 2 sister characters, Nina and Amy, because I have a sister. We're very close. And so that relationship was something that I related to.
Right.
And in terms of sort of the one element in the book that is really, really special to me is the story of the prayer card that Jack's grandfather gives to Jack, and then Jack gives to Javier. Because that is a true story from my grandfather's time in World War II. It's, and my family, we still have that prayer card. It's 80 plus years old now.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it's just this, this story of pure kind of selflessness and compassion between 2 people that I felt I wanted to sort of immortalize in a book, and especially in a book that is about how humans aren't always selfless and compassionate, and sometimes we are, selfish and discriminatory and all of those bad things. And so I wanted to have this moment of just kind of pure generosity.
Yeah. And so 2 of the main characters go to Venice on a holiday. Did you pick Venice for a reason? Because it's, possibly sinking.
I love Venice. It was a place that I had been several years before I started writing this book, but it was just a place that was so inspiring to me that I was like jotting down notes as I was there. And I was like, I don't know if I'm ever going to use these things that I'm writing, but maybe someday. And so then, as I was thinking about, okay, this is a book about fate. And to me, Venice is this place that has a sense of kind of fate looming over it. Yeah. This is it running out of time kind of question. And so I felt like thematically that worked.
It did work. It was brilliant. I thought it was great.
Thank you. Yeah. And then I had them go to Verona as well, where I went as well, which is just such a special place because it truly has the courtyard that is, may or may not be Juliet's courtyard with the balcony. And people from all around the world leave letters there, letters that they've written to Juliet asking for her advice. And there is this kind of letter writing relationship in the book. And so I thought there is this connection between kind of the power of letters and this sort of intimacy of letters that I wanted to capture.
Oh, that's great. So I'm curious as to, you said you haven't had a lot of time to read lately, and I understand that. Do you have any books on your nightstand that you're dying to read, or any authors that inspire you, or?
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of inspiration, Anne Patchett is a writer whose career, just is the dream career. And just every book she writes is so different, but so equally kind of beautiful and moving. And so I have to read her latest. And I did just read The Candy House by Jennifer Egan, which was the follow-up to Visit from the Goon Squad, which
I haven't read that, but I heard it's very good.
It's very good. She, is incredible. And so if you've read both of those, that's a really cool experience.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I asked about your family and friends, reading the book early on, your parents and your sister. So now what do they think about the success? Are they just like blown away by it, or did they ever imagine that this would be such a New York Times bestseller so quickly, and it's your debut novel?
I don't think any of us imagined that. I'm just so lucky that, we did have that. It was March 2020. I got laid off. I didn't know what to do. And it was my parents who really kind of grounded me and said, like, it's okay. Try to finish this book that you've been trying to write for 2 years. Like, maybe this is a sign. One door closes, another opens. One can only hope. And so I feel like they really are what made this happen. So absolutely, they're integral to the story.
Yeah. So as you had mentioned, the Girlfriend newsletter and the website, we're all about female friendship and the power of female friendship, especially as you grow older. I'm just curious. I always ask every author this. I mean, when you're not reading and you're not writing, what do you like to do for fun with your friends, or even just your other hobbies? What else do you like to do?
Yeah, I recently formed a book club with my friends, actually. And so we do one a month, like themed. We pick a book and then have a theme book club for it. And so I think our next book is A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting, which is, a book from England. And so I think we're going to have like a British tea and read the book. And so we do these sort of fun events, which is nice. And I'm just a big explorer. Like, I like taking day trips to a town I haven't gone to. And that's sort of fun for me when the weather is good and you can do that.
Yeah. So you were a travel writer for a long time. So what are your favorite spots that you visited?
Oh my gosh. Well, Italy has a special sort of place in my heart, and it's why it's in the book. I think the most kind of unique place I visited, where I might not have been able to, go if I hadn't been on assignment, was Arctic Norway, like up in the sort of fjords and sort of the Arctic region. And we did a boat trip there where they put you in this massive suit that if you fall into the water, it like protects you from hypothermia because the water is so cold. And I'm not normally that kind of outdoorsy adventurous. And so, being in this beautiful nature out on this boat in the middle of the water, it was a really kind of special moment for me. It's not something that I normally do. And it was just spectacular.
So when you hear from readers, do they have, or when you do book signings or whatever, do they have questions for you? What do they most often say to you about the book?
First is usually where the idea come from, and then the second is, would you open the box ever? And I don't know. Right? I don't know if they're disappointed when I say no. Maybe I wouldn't. I think I have a lot of respect for people who are just so aware and so absolutely yes, I would open it the minute it comes. And I think maybe people want me to say that, and I usually don't. But it's been amazing connecting with readers. I've heard, because this book has kind of heavier emotional topics, people have reached out to me whose lives have really mirrored sort of the relationships in this book. People who were married to someone whose string was a lot shorter than theirs. And so it's been such an honor to hear these stories and, to hear from these readers. And I will always remember one gentleman sent me a letter that said he now keeps a string in his wallet to kind of remember to live each day to the fullest. And
that is so sweet.
That's just the most incredible compliment that I could have gotten.
Well, and finally, I just have to ask because everybody wants to know, what are you working on next?
I'm hopefully starting another novel. As I described before, sometimes writer's block can be very intense for me. I'm struggling a little bit, but I do have plans to hopefully keep writing as long as people will keep reading. I would love to continue this amazing journey.
So your plan now is to be a full-time novel writer.
For hopefully like the next year or so, if I can, I'm
Yeah.
going to sort of take this risk. And I have a supportive family, supportive team who's there with me, and so I would love to spend this next year and see if I can. This first book took maybe like 3-4 years to write, so if I can do this one a little bit faster, that might be nice.
I mean, are you constantly thinking about ideas, right? You must be. I mean, when this first came out, you must have been thinking, now what am I going to do?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to, for the last 6 months, I've tried to also be really mindful of not rushing into the next project,
Right.
taking this moment to just feel grateful, kind of feel in this moment, and appreciate everything that's happening. But yeah, I definitely would like to keep writing. And I've always been someone who has like a notebook with me, or if I don't have a notebook, I have my phone sort of notes app. And so I'm always jotting down like sentences that come to my head, and often they're completely disconnected from anything. They'll never be able to be used in a book because they're totally random, but I do jot them down whenever they come up.
Oh, and I was going to ask you one more thing. Were there sections of this? Did you have to shorten this at all? Were there sections that were cut out of this, of the original book, that did not make it in the final copy? I'm just curious.
I actually had to lengthen it.
Oh, you did lengthen it. Okay.
Yeah, when I first wrote the manuscript, it was probably around 200 something pages.
Yeah.
And I smugly was like, that's it. I've said everything. I'm done. I feel so good about it. And my agent was like, this needs to be longer. And of course, now it's 370 pages. So it's there was so much more I could have written that I just in that moment didn't see yet. Yeah. And so it was stepping back from it and then coming back with fresh eyes and realizing, oh my gosh, there's so much more kind of to dig into here. How could I have ever thought that I had said everything in 200 pages?
Well, that's a really good agent, actually. That's good.
Yes. Yeah. I was in very good hands. But when she said it, I was a little bit like overwhelmed. Like, what do you mean it has to be another 100 pages? What, oh my gosh. Like,
Well, anyway, thank you so much, Nikki Erlick. The book, of course, it's our December book club pick, The Measure. Most of the people in the book club have read it, but for that handful who hasn't, you must read it because it's definitely one of my favorite books. So I'm so thrilled that you're here with us tonight. Again, a reminder, stay onto the book club page after this interview, because I'll be posting about 6 conversation starters so that you guys can talk about the book amongst yourselves.
That's great.
And just again, one more reminder that next month our book is Mad Honey. And the authors are joining us on January 17th. And then the book in February is The Quarry Girls. And tomorrow I'll be asking you guys to start the voting process for the March book club pick, it takes a while. So, anyway, so thanks, everybody. Thank you so much, Nikki. Congratulations on this accomplishment, your debut novel being an instant New York Times bestseller. It's such an amazing achievement. So thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for reading and for submitting questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks, Nikki.